Months passed and Daniel's downfall never fully faded from conversation. He had tried to rebuild, tried to prove he could rise above it all. But without me, he struggled. The job market didn't care that he was Margaret's son. The women he pursued weren't interested in a man who had lost everything. And Margaret? She had become a cautionary tale herself, her meddling reputation preceding her, ensuring no one wanted to be associated with her. One day, a former colleague of Daniel's stopped by my boutique. "You dodged a bullet," she said. "Daniel is, well, let's just say he's not doing great." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. I already knew the truth. He had been given everything, and he had thrown it all away. Meanwhile, I had built everything, and I wasn't finished yet. On the one-year anniversary of my new life, I hosted a small gathering at my flagship boutique. Not to celebrate revenge. Not to gloat. But to acknowledge how far I had come. I had spent too many years proving myself to people who never truly valued me. Now, I was valuing myself. No more shrinking. No more waiting for approval. No more fighting for love that was never real. I stood in my boutique, surrounded by strong, independent women, women who supported me, who understood me. For the first time, I truly felt at home. That's when I saw her, Melissa. The young woman Margaret had once paraded around as a better option for Daniel. She hovered near the entrance, hesitant, almost embarrassed. I raised an eyebrow. Before I could speak, she did. "I owe you an apology," she said softly. I leaned against the counter, waiting. "I believed you," she admitted. "I believed that you were the problem, that you were disposable." She looked down, shame and realization washing over her. Then, she added softly, "And then I saw what she did to Daniel, and I realized that could have been me." I let her words settle. "But tell me something, Margaret," I said, rising slowly to my feet. "When you told him to leave me, when you promised him someone better, did it ever occur to you that you might be wrong?" She paled. "No," I said softly, cutting her off before she could form a defense. "You didn't." Now she had to live with it. Margaret opened her mouth, but no words came. Deep down, she knew the truth. I had never been the problem. She had been. She had built Daniel into a man who couldn't stand on his own. She had raised him to believe entitlement was strength. And in the end, it was her arrogance that destroyed him. Margaret stumbled backward, suddenly looking decades older in the span of a few moments. "Get out of my office, Margaret," I said calmly. She hesitated, one last flicker of defiance, but she had no power left. So she left. As the door clicked shut behind her, I let out a slow, satisfied breath. The storm was over. And I was still standing. Margaret never contacted me again after that day. Neither did Daniel. The silence was deafening. And yet, it was the best kind of silence, the kind that signified freedom. No more manipulation. No more second-guessing myself. No more fighting for a place in a family that had never deserved me. I had won. But more importantly, I had grown. The first morning I truly felt free, I woke up to the sound of nothing. No tension. No forced conversations. No passive-aggressive texts. Just peace. And yet, the world kept moving. My business thrived. My team expanded. My confidence was unshakable. Funny, isn't it? Margaret had spent years trying to convince me I wasn't enough, that without Daniel I would crumble, that my success somehow depended on him. And now, while she and her son scrambled to pick up the pieces of their mess, I was soaring, untouchable, unstoppable, and finally, entirely free. I was too busy building something greater to notice the whispers. I didn't think this would happen," he admitted, voice low, hesitant. "I thought," he paused, swallowed. "You thought your mother was right." There it was. The truth. For the first time, Daniel admitted it, he had placed his mother's opinions above everything else, logic, reality, me. "And where has it gotten you?" I asked softly. "Nowhere. I didn't want to hurt you," he murmured weakly. "But you did," I said flatly. Another pause. "Can we meet?" he finally asked. I closed my eyes. There it was, his last desperate attempt to pull me back. But he didn't want me. He wanted security. He wanted the life he had thrown away. And I wasn't in the business of saving men from their own arrogance. No, Daniel, I said firmly. We have nothing left to talk about. For the first time, he heard the finality in my voice. I heard real panic in his voice. Claire, wait. Goodbye, Daniel, I said firmly and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. But Margaret, she wasn't finished embarrassing herself yet. 2 days later, she appeared at my office, storming past my receptionist as if the world owed her passage. She barged into my private office like she still had authority over my life. This is your fault, she spat, slamming her hands on my desk. I stayed seated, calm, unbothered. What exactly is my fault? I asked, cool and measured. You ruined my son's life. You took everything from him, the house, the security, everything. No, Margaret, I interrupted, my voice smooth, cutting through her fury. I didn't take anything. Daniel gave it all away. She blinked, stunned. Excuse me. I leaned forward, letting my words land. Daniel chose to listen to you. He chose to believe I was disposable. He chose to walk away. I let the words sink in before continuing, softer this time, almost pitying. You won't believe what's happening, they said. I sipped my coffee, genuinely amused. Try me. Daniel lost his job. That got my attention. How? I asked, intrigued. Apparently, Margaret had gone straight to his boss, trying to engineer a promotion she insisted he deserved, after everything he had done. The irony. The poetic justice. It was all unfolding exactly as it should. I almost choked on my drink. Of course she did. Margaret wasn't just overbearing. She was delusional. She had spent years believing Daniel was entitled to success, that his name alone carried weight, that the world should bend around him. The corporate world doesn't reward arrogance. What did his boss do? I asked, genuinely curious. Not only did they not promote him, my friend continued, but HR started reviewing his performance. Turns out he was already underperforming, and with Margaret storming in, making a scene, they fired him. I exhaled slowly, letting it sink in. Daniel had lost his home. Daniel had lost his security. And now, Daniel had lost his job. Not because of me. Because of her. Margaret had spent years shielding Daniel from consequences, smoothing over every failure, protecting him from reality. And in one dramatic, reckless move, she had destroyed him. And I wasn't even finished watching it all fall apart. 2 days later, another call came, this time from Daniel. I let it ring. I wasn't interested. Then a text arrived. Claire, please, can we talk? I stared at the message, weighing my options. I owed him nothing. Not my time. Not my pity. But curiosity, a small, irresistible flicker, got the better of me. I answered. His relief was immediate. Claire, his voice cracked. I messed up. I know that. I don't know what to do anymore. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch between us. What do you want me to say, Daniel? I asked. Margaret's hands shook. Her polished facade of control, the armor she had worn for decades, was cracking. She had spent years believing herself untouchable, that she could manipulate, intimidate, and command everyone around her. But here, standing in the driveway of a house that wasn't hers, she finally understood. She had lost. And worse, she had never been in control. I didn't stay to listen to her last desperate attempts to save face. I didn't care. I walked to my car, each step lighter than the last. And with every step, I felt something I hadn't in months, relief. I wasn't just walking away from Daniel. I wasn't just walking away from Margaret. I was walking away from all of it. The quiet belittling. The manipulation. The constant battle to prove my worth to people who were never worthy of me. I was free. And they were trapped. Daniel, stuck with the consequences of his choices. Margaret, powerless in the empire she had tried to steal. And me? I was just getting started. Margaret wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. 2 days later, I received a message, not from Daniel but from her. You may have the house, but don't think for a second that you've won. My son will recover. He will find someone better. Someone who actually belongs in this family. Enjoy your lonely little empire, while it lasts. I smiled as I read it. Oh, Margaret, still clinging to the illusion of control. Still convinced that Daniel had something to recover from. Still thinking I had lost. She was about to learn the truth. The hard way. I ignored her message. There was no reason to respond. Life has a funny way of delivering karma, sometimes without any help from you. A week later, a mutual friend, one of the few who had stayed neutral throughout the ordeal, reached out. I turned to leave, the finality of my stride deliberate. But Daniel's hand closed gently around my wrist, desperation in every inch of his touch. Claire, please, he murmured. I paused, glancing down at his hand. A year ago, that touch might have meant something. Now it was nothing more than the desperate grasp of a man drowning in his own mistakes. You don't have to do this, he pleaded. I made a mistake. I let my mom get in my head, but we can fix this. I studied him. The man I had once loved. The man I had built a life with. But that man didn't exist anymore. Or perhaps, he never had. You don't get to play the victim now, Daniel, I said, calm but unyielding. Not after everything. Not after you chose her over me. Daniel swallowed hard, his eyes betraying the first flicker of shame. I was an idiot, he admitted quietly. Yes, I agreed plainly. You were. He flinched at my bluntness. Margaret let out an indignant noise, as if the very concept of being powerless were beyond comprehension. I was speaking to her son that way, ignoring Margaret entirely. You and your mother wanted me gone, I said evenly, letting each word hang in the crisp air. And I gave you exactly what you asked for. So tell me, Daniel, why aren't you happy? He looked away, shame settling over his features like a dark shadow. I didn't need to hear his answer. I already knew it. You think this is over. Margaret seized on the silence, her voice rising, trembling with fury. It's not over, she cried. I turned to her, calm and unshakable. It is over. You just don't want to accept it. This house was supposed to be Daniel's, she wailed. But it never was, I corrected gently. And neither was anything else. Everything you thought you were entitled to, it wasn't yours. Daniel, meanwhile, looked pale, mouth slightly agape, grappling with the impossibility of it all. Claire, we can fix this, he finally managed to whisper. I almost laughed. Fix what? I asked lightly. Your mother's little scheme. The way you played along with it. Or the fact that you actually believed you could just walk away and keep everything. I didn't wait for an answer. I simply kept walking, free, victorious, and utterly untouchable. I built it. Margaret stepped forward, fury radiating from every pore. You tricked him, she hissed, eyes blazing. You manipulated my son into signing that prenup. I tilted my head, letting the weight of her accusation hang in the air. Tricked? I echoed, my voice smooth and measured. You mean the prenup that Daniel signed willingly? The one that legally protects my business, my assets, and my property. Daniel opened his mouth, clearly wanting to interject, but I raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Tell me, Daniel, I said, letting my words sink in like stones. Did you even read it? Or did you, like your mother, just assume that none of this would ever matter? Silence answered me. And that silence said everything I needed to know. Margaret's breath came in sharp, quick bursts. She wasn't just furious anymore, she was panicking. This is wrong, she spat. You're being spiteful. You're tearing this family apart out of pure pettiness. Am I? I asked, my voice smooth as silk. Or are you just angry that the game you started didn't end the way you planned? Margaret's face flushed deep crimson. You were never good enough for this family, she snapped. I stepped closer, meeting her glare head-on, yet my tone was soft, almost intimate. And yet, I said, letting each word resonate, it's still my name on the deed. The air between us crackled with something raw and electric. For the first time in her life, Margaret was powerless, and she knew it. Margaret blinked rapidly, as if trying to comprehend a sentence her mind had never been programmed to process. That doesn't make sense," Daniel stammered, desperation creeping into his tone. I tilted my head, curiosity feigning innocence. "I thought you thought what?" "That you owned this house, that we owned it," he blurted. I let the words sink in, letting the tension stretch. "Daniel, this house was never yours." Margaret's face drained of color. "No," she sputtered, panic rising in pitch. No, that's not possible." "That's reality," I said softly, firmly. Daniel's jaw tightened, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "But, we lived here together." I let you." "I let you." I echoed, calm, measured, almost gentle. "Daniel, this house was mine before we ever met. I purchased it in my name, with my money. Before him. Before any of this." A beat of silence. Margaret, predictably, lost her composure entirely. "This is ridiculous," she spat, her voice rising. "You are nothing without my son. You had nothing before him." I stepped closer, voice soft but icy. "I had everything before him. And I still do." Daniel exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair, the first true glimmer of realization dawning in his eyes. "This was bigger than a house. Claire," he said quietly, voice trembling, "let's talk this through. Maybe we can work something out." I smiled, light and easy, like a sunbeam cutting through storm clouds. "Oh, Daniel," I said softly. "We already did." Margaret gasped. Daniel froze. And just like that, I watched their world shatter. I turned toward the car, but not before leaving one final truth to echo in the driveway. "You wanted to be free of me," I said. "Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted." Then I walked away, leaving them standing on my property, the weight of reality settling in far too late. Margaret remained frozen, her carefully curated world collapsing piece by piece around her. Not yet. Let him marinate in the consequences he chose. The next day, Margaret entered the battlefield, and tasted her first real fear. I was cutting into a perfectly cooked filet mignon in my suite when my phone lit up again. From my lawyer. "Margaret just called. She's furious. She says there must be a mistake." Oh, I could hear it, her sharp voice slicing through the phone lines. "What do you mean my son's name isn't on the house? Fix it. Fix it now." She must have insisted it was a clerical error. A misunderstanding. Because in her delusions, everything Daniel touched automatically belonged to him. But reality does not bend for delusions. Not the house. Not the luxury cars in the garage. Not the investments she bragged about to her friends. Not even the little business she once sneered at. None of it belonged to Daniel. And absolutely none of it belonged to her. I took another slow sip of wine. The real mistake wasn't on any document. It was the one she made the moment she underestimated me. By the time both Daniel and Margaret demanded an explanation, I was more than ready. It was my turn to speak. My turn to reveal the truth. My turn to end this game, beautifully. I met them at the house, the very one Margaret had once adored, proudly calling their family estate. Daniel was already waiting in the driveway, arms crossed, pacing with the anxious rhythm of a man who sensed the ground shifting beneath him. Margaret hovered beside him, her carefully polished poise beginning to crack in ways that made my smile widen ever so slightly. "Claire," Daniel began, voice tense, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I replied, stepping out of the car with deliberate, measured ease. "Yes," his mother snapped. "There's been a mistake. The bank is saying this house is in your name." "That's not a mistake," I interrupted smoothly, letting the words settle like stones in the quiet air. Silence. I checked into a luxury hotel that night. The same one Margaret once boasted about hosting charity galas in, claiming her family's influence got her the penthouse. Oh, the poetry. I ordered champagne, kicked back in a plush robe, and watched the shimmering skyline from my suite window. Every sip tasted like justice. Tomorrow morning, Margaret would wake up feeling victorious. Daniel would think he was moving forward, unburdened by the woman who had apparently held him back. They would laugh. They would celebrate. Because they truly believed they had won. But by the time they learned the truth, It would already be far too late. Margaret must have slept like a queen that night, blissfully ignorant that her crown was counterfeit, and about to crumble. I could picture her perfectly. Sipping her morning coffee in the sunlit dining room she worshipped, her trophies, my floors, my furniture, my money, gleaming around her. She must have felt invincible. In her head, she had won. She had erased me. Removed the unworthy woman from her perfect son's life. The next step was already planned. A new wife. A better wife. A woman she could mold, manipulate, own. And as for me, she assumed I was curled up somewhere, heart shattered, dignity destroyed, a cautionary tale for any woman foolish enough to forget her place. I smiled to myself. She truly had no idea. While she toasted her imaginary victory, her world was already cracking beneath her feet. Daniel's first wake-up call arrived that morning. 10:02 a.m. Daniel, Claire, we need to talk. Something's wrong with the house. I set the phone aside. 11:47 a.m. Daniel, why is the bank saying my name isn't on the mortgage? Call me. There it was. Not even 24 hours, and he had discovered what he really let go. I let the messages sit unanswered, confusion evolving into irritation, and then 3 p.m. My lawyer. He called. He's realizing the truth. Let me know when you want to respond. He sat beside me, shoulders tense, his hands fidgeting, that same nervous habit he'd had since college. Predictable. Pathetic. So easy to read. The game was finally moving into its final act. And I was ready. Very ready. I think we should separate, he finally managed to say. I tilted my head, as if genuinely needing time to process the words he had clearly rehearsed. Oh? I murmured, letting a gentle curiosity lace my voice. It's just, we want different things, he continued, stumbling through the same exhausted lines that cheaters, liars, and cowards had clung to for centuries. We? I asked lightly, raising a brow just to watch him squirm. Who's we, Daniel? A flicker of panic darted across his features, a tiny crack in his bravado. He wasn't prepared for this version of me. He had braced for tears, accusations, emotional chaos. But all I gave him was a calm, knowing smile. If that's what you want, Daniel, I said, voice smooth as silk. He blinked. Confusion darkened his eyes. You're not upset. Why would I be? I replied honestly, because truly, why? He searched my face, lost and suddenly unsure. You don't want to fight for our marriage. I stood, brushing invisible lint from my shirt. Should I? It seems you've already made up your mind. Without another word, I strolled to our bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and placed it neatly on the bed. I'll give you some space, I told him calmly. I'll stay somewhere else for a while. The look on his face, priceless. Claire, wait, I don't mean you have to leave tonight. I just meant. But I was already packing. Neatly. Efficiently. Elegantly. Let him think I was devastated. Let him think he was the one walking away. Let him believe he was winning. He had no idea that I wanted him to feel free. Because freedom? For him, for both of them, was about to become very, very expensive. You're quiet today, he said, glancing up briefly. Everything okay? I smiled. A soft, deceptive smile. Everything's perfect. And it was. Because I had made my decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to defend myself. I was going to let them win. Or at least, let them believe they had. Because what's sweeter than victory? Watching your enemies build their own downfall brick by brick. By mid-afternoon, the first text arrived. A message from Margaret, the queen of delusion herself. Daniel and I had a lovely lunch today. He agrees it's time to move forward. Time to move forward. How bold of her to assume she was leading the march. I sipped my wine, a slow, luxurious sip, and left the message unanswered. Let her imagination dance. Let her confidence swell. Overconfidence is such a delicious weakness. 2 hours later. I hope you understand, Claire. This is what's best for everyone. Best for everyone. How noble she must have felt, deciding my fate like a self-anointed goddess. I smirked, not out of hurt but pure entertainment. Poor Margaret. She genuinely believed she was the puppeteer. I typed back 2 simple words. I understand. I could practically hear her champagne flute clink in celebration. She was probably already calling her friends. She took it so well. She finally knows her place. Now Daniel can be with someone worthy of us. Oh, Margaret. She truly had no idea. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual. He paused in the doorway longer than necessary, his expression a mixture of guilt and cowardice. Perfect. The weight of his mother's manipulation was already pressing down on him. Hey babe, he began weakly. Can we talk? Ah, there it was. The rehearsed speech. The moment he would unknowingly give me permission to destroy everything. Of course, I said, settling onto the couch. Subtle venom turned into sharpened blades coated in sugary sweetness. Claire just doesn't understand our lifestyle, sweetheart. Wouldn't you be happier with someone who truly fits in? It's not her fault, really. She was simply raised differently. I watched. Observed. Daniel shrugged her off each time, naive, eager to keep the peace, never noticing the storm his mother was summoning. Then the night came when she pushed too far. I was passing the hallway when their whispered conversation caught my ears, her voice low and urgent, his uneasy. She's not right for you, she insisted. You've given her enough. It's time to move on. Then she delivered the final blow, the one that nearly made me laugh. If you divorce her now, I'll make sure you walk away with everything. Everything. The house. The wealth. The life she believed belonged to her precious son. She thought she was holding all the cards. She had no idea the deck was mine. Later, as I lay beside Daniel in bed, his breath deep and even, unaware of the war declared in his name, a quiet fire burned beneath my calm exterior. Let her think she's winning. Let her believe she is in control. Soon, the truth would come for her. And when it did, the fall would echo. I realized something. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shocked. I was amused. Because the truth was simple. They had already lost. They just hadn't been informed of it yet. The first crack in Daniel's perfect illusion came the very next morning at breakfast. I sat across from him, swirling the steam from my coffee, while he scrolled through his phone, oblivious, relaxed. He had no idea the war his mother had initiated the night before. No clue that every smug whisper she delivered was just tightening the noose around her own neck. She expected tears. Begging. Humiliation. She expected me to quietly pack up my insignificance and leave, while she replaced me with a newer, richer model. Instead, I smiled. Not a smile of defeat, oh no. This was the kind of smile that should have made her blood run cold. I understand perfectly, I said. Then I turned my back on her, graceful, steady, and walked away. Leaving her standing in that sun-drenched kitchen with confusion twisting her perfectly painted face. She had no idea that in trying to destroy me, she had just destroyed everything she wanted to protect. And the worst part? She wouldn't realize it until it was far, far too late. She had no idea. No idea that the house she loved parading her friends through, the one with marble countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows, wasn't Daniel's. No idea that the little project she constantly mocked, rolling her eyes at my long work hours, had become a powerhouse worth more than Daniel's entire career would earn in a lifetime. No idea that the extravagant vacations, the designer jewelry she bragged about to her country club clique, the very lifestyle she weaponized to belittle me, was funded entirely by the empire I built from nothing. She thought she had won. She didn't realize she had already lost. I didn't tell Daniel about his mother's ultimatum that night. I didn't need to. Because while she was busy plotting to remove me from the picture, she never once realized she had been standing in a home that didn't belong to her son. Literally. Our mansion, the one she adored flaunting as Daniel's success, had been purchased years before our marriage. In my name. With my money. I let Daniel take the spotlight. Let his mother believe that he had built this life for us. It was easier that way. Truth was, his entire salary could barely cover the monthly utilities. The moment she decided I was disposable, she signed her own downfall. Over the next few weeks, she grew bolder. My mother-in-law told my husband to leave me, she's not good enough for our family. I only smiled and walked away. Because when she finally discovered the truth, that I owned everything she had been scheming for, it was already far too late. The moment she ruined her own son's life came wrapped in pearls, and a glass of expensive champagne. It was a warm Sunday afternoon. Sunlight spilled across the dining room as I cleared plates from the table after our family brunch. Laughter floated from the living room, Daniel and his father exchanging stories, carefree and oblivious. That's when she struck. Daniel's mother leaned over the kitchen counter, her voice a practiced whisper, honey sweet but dripping with poison. Clara dear, she began, placing a manicured hand on my wrist as though she were comforting me. Let's not drag this out. You need to leave my son. I froze only for a moment, the silverware suddenly heavier in my grasp, before setting it down with calm precision. Across the room, Daniel laughed again. He didn't see the bomb detonating at his back. You've had your fun, she continued, smoothing a perfectly placed curl. But surely you must know, you're not the right fit for our family. Ah. There it was, the truth she had kept veiled behind polite smiles and glittering diamonds. Every subtle jab about my upbringing. Every quiet remark about my lack of sophistication. The way she never introduced me as anything but Daniel's wife, as though I had no identity or worth on my own. But today she wasn't hiding. No prestigious last name, she pressed, gaze scanning me like a flawed artifact. No connections. A woman like you will only hold Daniel back. We need someone who belongs in our circle, someone who elevates us. Her diamonds caught the light as she lifted her champagne flute, a queen confident in her power. You understand, don't you? Daniel will remarry. We will find a more suitable bride. Someone deserving of him. Margaret had wanted me gone because she thought I was beneath them. And now the very women she believed were better were seeing the truth. You're lucky, I said finally. You got out before it was too late. She exhaled, nodding. I heard about your success, she said quietly. I wanted to see it for myself. I gestured around my boutique, my empire, my legacy. Well, I said with a smirk, welcome to the little shop Margaret tried to destroy. She chuckled, shaking her head. She underestimated you. A lot of people did, I agreed. As the night ended, I stepped outside, looking up at the city skyline. The same skyline I had gazed at on the night Daniel left me. Back then, I had been preparing for a battle. Now, I had already won. Not because I had taken revenge. Not because I had watched them suffer. But because I had taken my life back. Margaret had wanted me erased. Instead, I had flourished. Daniel had thought he was moving on. I had moved up. And the best part? I hadn't done it for them. I had done it for me. Margaret once told me I wasn't good enough for her family. And in the end, she was right. I wasn't good enough for them. I was better.